I remember, some of our boots, those are new guys, we call them boots, would ask me like how I was keeping my spirits up throughout the war. When everybody else was either freaked out or like worried about the outcome, what would happen, worried about getting shot or blown up or whatever it was. And they would say, Corporal Courier, how are you, like so positive? And I said, don't you see all these cameras around? There weren't any cameras, of course, but I would always tell them they're filming a Hollywood movie right now, and you're in charge of picking your character. I mean, you get to dictate that. And I knew the character I wanted to play, and I was enjoying it. I didn't enjoy all the things that I had to do along the way, but as far as like a character and a leader and a role model, I knew what I wanted to be and I knew how I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to do it with respect and pride. Back when I was 18 years old, I had probably seen the movie Full Metal Jacket about 1,000 times. I had every line of the movie memorized, and my dad was a Marine, so I think it was inevitable I was going to end up becoming a Marine. And I graduated boot camp in October, and a year later, September 11th happened. Right after September 11th, we went on our first deployment immediately. We were assisting and helping out with the beginning of what would become Operation Enduring Freedom. I had been dating a girl for 7 years. And while I was over there, she had sent me ring sizers and wanted to start planning the wedding for when I got home. I picked the one that fit my finger. I sent it home to her, and I just, smiled when I put it in the mail, let her do her thing, to plan a wedding. It had already been 7 years. I had been dating the girl since I was 15 years old, since right when I turned 15. She was my first everything, I loved the girl to death. And March 19th, 2003, I was sitting on the border just waiting and waiting and waiting. We finally got the call, and we invaded Iraq on March 19th, 2003. My unit we were called the Tip of the Spear, 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion. We pushed north, I think it was about 600 kilometers from Kuwait all the way through to Tikrit, engaged in every city along the way. We were in at least a firefight almost every single day.
I had this gut feeling. Nothing would shake it. I couldn't stay away from the news. It was on 24/7 when they had the in-bed reporters, and he was the first unit in, so I got to watch it. I thought something bad was gonna happen, and when it didn't, and we got notice that their unit was coming back to base. They weren't allowed to leave though. So I went and, I made a big banner and welcomed him with everybody else, and they had kind of a parade, and they had so many stories and so much emotion. And
it was really cool to see how the country embraced us. We were heroes in San Diego and in Southern California when we came back. They said after the 4th day that we'd be able to go home and see our families. And on the 3rd night, a friend of mine had asked me to drive him down to San Diego. I said that was fine because he didn't have a vehicle as long as he drove home. And I had to be up early in the morning, so when we got to San Diego, I fell asleep in the truck and just waited for him. He got back in the truck, drove back to base, and right at the entrance of the base where the gate is, the road curves to the left, and he had fallen asleep at the wheel and just kept driving straight. We were doing about 80 miles an hour or so when he had fallen asleep with his foot on the gas, hit a tree, and then we ended up rolling down a hill about a dozen times and onto Camp Pendleton. I woke up, my head was turned around backwards, my face had been kind of caved in, and my lungs collapsed, and I knew something was really wrong. I didn't know what had happened. I was really confused, and my lungs were collapsed, so I only had about 60 seconds of time to breathe. Over those 60 seconds, the breaths just got shorter and shorter and shorter. It's weird because I don't feel like I'm somebody who quits anything, but in the end, I almost feel like I had given up. That last breath that I took, I knew, and I made peace with it right there. I mean, they got so short, it was just like, and I knew that one of those was the last one. And then I woke up 5 days later in a hospital. I heard my brother's guitar playing and I heard him singing in my hospital room. And I came out of the coma, and they told me right away that I had broken my neck in the accident and I was paralyzed from the neck down. And at first, it wasn't even a big deal to me when they told me, because right when I got the news, it was like, well, I can overcome anything. They might say that I'll never walk out of here, but give me a month and I'll be running again. The doctors told me that wasn't going to happen, and I always thought they were wrong. And I think after about the first year, 18 months, I finally, it started clicking that they knew more than I did about the severity of my accident, and that I was never going to walk out of the hospital or get out of this wheelchair.
It couldn't be, because I already made sure. I flew out there. I touched him. I stayed with him in his barracks for 3 days. I knew he was okay. They already had to operate. They didn't know if he was even going to survive. He broke his neck. I didn't believe her. I couldn't be it, because I already did my job. I already made sure, and I hung up on her. I said, no, it's not my son.
So right when I got home from the hospital, I got to see my family and I got to see Maureen. The next week she had started moving her stuff in with me, and she called me and I was already in bed, and I was just barely awake. And she said, hey, I just want to let you know I'm going to be working late. And I said, I'm actually in bed already, so go ahead and work late, and I'll just see you whenever you get home. And I woke up the next morning and my bed was empty. She wasn't there. And right away I knew something was wrong. And then my phone rang and I couldn't answer my phone. I knew when my phone was ringing and it was a number that I didn't recognize that something was wrong. And I heard my mom come down the hall and answer the phone in the kitchen. I heard her say hello. I heard silence for a minute, and then I heard the phone fall and hit the floor, and then I heard my mom fall and hit the floor. And when I heard that and I heard the tears start, I knew right away, and she had passed away in the accident. That's when everything just came crashing down. The reality set in. I started feeling really sorry for myself. I would cry looking in the mirror. I couldn't even stand looking in the mirror and seeing myself sitting 90 degrees. I was such an active person, and my physical fitness was such a big part of my life. I went through a long period of time where I couldn't even say a single word. Like, my vocal cords wouldn't work. I couldn't even say the word okay. So I just started hiding. I hung out in my room a lot. A couple close friends would come over and they would get drunk with me, and it started off drinking a lot and turned into drinking all the time. I was always drunk. And I was also taking a bunch of meds that the VA was giving me. And then it turned into, some street drugs. I'd gotten a rifle and I was ready. I didn't have any desire to live anymore. It had gone on for so long, and I still wasn't able to climb out of a hole. I wasn't even trying to climb out of a hole. So I started learning, even though my hands don't work, and this new rifle, the charging handle on it was a little tight, so it was hard for me to figure out how to pull it back. And I remember I would sit at the end of my bed, I would mount the rifle between my legs, upside down, and I would push the charging handle back with both hands, on my palms. And I finally got it. It was so heavy, it was so hard for me to do. And I turned the rifle back around and I leaned over it and I put my thumb on the trigger, and that started becoming a nightly occurrence. I left the charging handle back, and every night I would pull it back out and I would lean over it and I would put it in my mouth. And I got really familiar with the taste of that barrel. I would taste that salty barrel, and I say it was salty because it was covered in tears, every night. And, but it would make me wake up the next day. And it was like, just one more wake up, just one more wake up. And I say that to anybody else who's ever struggling. It's like, you just need to get get to bed and wake up again. You're at your bottom right now. If you have a barrel in your mouth or if you're considering those things, you're at the bottom. And there's only one place to go from there if you don't follow through with the action, and it's back up. A friend of mine knew where I was at. A friend of mine saw the rifle on my bed. A friend of mine, like there were situations where guys were starting to realize we need to do something with them. And one of my friends kept telling me about adaptive sports. And he would tell me stuff like, you need to come to this event in Colorado and go skiing with me. I say, dude, I'm a quadriplegic. I'm not going skiing. It doesn't even make sense. And then he showed me some of the equipment that they used and how you sit down in it and somebody's behind you tethering you, like if you can't stop or turn or anything. So after 2 years of telling him no, I finally said yes. Now, this is when everything changed in my life because against, everything that I wanted to do, I went out to Aspen, Colorado. I got on a ski lift with a couple instructors and we went halfway up the mountain and then they asked me if I wanted to get on the other lift right next to it and go all the way to the top. So we went all the way to the top, I get off the lift, we turn around and we're facing forward and I'm looking out at what seemed to, in my vision, be the entire planet. I remember when my instructors got behind me and they were like gonna scoot me to the edge of the hill so we could start the run. And I asked them to hold on for a minute, because I just wanted to take it in. I was at the pinnacle of, the highest point that I'd probably ever even been at in my life. And I was doing it as a quadriplegic. And I knew what I was about to face going down. And it was about to be a challenge. I was about to feel adrenaline again. I was about to find that piece of me that I had felt like had been missing for so long. Everything for me changed in that moment. It was very motivating. So now the next chapter starts. This is the beginning of the next chapter. All of a sudden, there was this goal that I didn't even really have, but I had just met. Getting out of my comfort zone gave me the confidence to think heck, if I can do this, I may as well, it just set this thing in motion. So I started going back to school, and then I signed up for the National Veteran Wheelchair Games. And when I went to the National Veteran Wheelchair Games, I met a whole new group of peers, a lot of them in very similar situations, a lot of quadriplegics and a lot of paraplegics. All these new friends that I met, I asked them all if I would see them again at the next event. I was hooked at that point. And everybody had the same response. It was always, well, if I can afford it. And I'm thinking, there was a light bulb went off. I was like, wait a second. So you would be at all these adaptive sports, and so would I, if we could afford them. Well, let's do something about that. I don't know what the solution is exactly, but with all of our powers combined, we can fix this, right? So 50 of us in a hotel lobby just started brainstorming some stuff. And we're like, well, we'll start a nonprofit that keeps people on the move. Oscar Mike, on the move, right? The name it just was immediate. Oscar Mike was a term that we used in Iraq all the time that told people when somebody said, I need you to get Oscar Mike, you didn't even think. There was no hesitation. You just started moving. You knew that they either needed help or you needed to get you needed to get somewhere fast. That was it. Let's get people moving. Let's shorten that period of time. Like me, that was a half a dozen years. Let's make that shorter. When it came time to saying, well, who's going to do this? Yeah, the idea is there. We're all agreeing on it, but who's going to do it? I remember saying, well, I got a 2-car garage. We can use that. And then 3 other guys all said, I can come out to Illinois for 6 months probably. And I got 3 guys to come out to Illinois for 6 months, rent a house and right next to mine and help me start Oscar Mike in a 2-car garage. We contacted an attorney to help us file for a nonprofit, a 501c3. He helped us file it that day, but he also said that it could take up to 2 years to get approved. And, that was a little disheartening to all of us. So we asked if we could also file for a business there so we could start doing something. We could start raising money. And he said, yeah, we can file a business today. You guys can start right now. So we did that and we filed for an LLC and we started Oscar Mike Apparel. So Oscar Mike Apparel helps fund the nonprofit, the Oscar Mike Foundation. And, it's the reason that we get to do what we do. It keeps us on the move. So the Oscar Mike Foundation is a nonprofit that helps injured veterans get involved in adaptive sports. And we fund a lot of what we do through Oscar Mike Apparel, which is an apparel company. Now, Oscar Mike is bringing the veteran service organization community together through apparel, even though we still have our nonprofit. So we're helping injured veterans get involved in adaptive sports, and we're bringing the community together through our apparel.
Initially, when I was hurt, I was in a huge, dark place I didn't think I would be able to get out of. One point, I contemplated, ending it all, but then I thought about who I would leave behind, and I just couldn't do it. So after I got through that stage, I looked at myself and didn't want to be bedridden and having all my family friends baby me and coddle me. I met Tim Bixey at the National Rugby Team's clinic 3 years ago. That's how I found out about Oscar Mike, and I've been with him since. In my old unit, our motto was deeds, not words. And I live by that even today. Show me something, I don't want to hear about it.
Where I'm sitting right now, where we're shooting this, this room, this glorious room right here, is in the Oscar Mike compound. It's our first facility, very large home, 7 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, and the purpose of us having this is to rehabilitate veterans, and maybe not even rehabilitate them. Maybe some of them have already been injured for a long time, but to give them a place that they feel like they're at home, they're a part of the family, they're breaking bread with us, they're training, they're kicking each other's butts, they're heckling each other all day long, and the community grows stronger and stronger and stronger, right? That's the purpose of this facility. And even though we just opened it, it's already working its magic. But this is a template, this is number one.
So today we are here, we've got 3 of our athletes that are competing in an adapted triathlon. What our athletes are going to be doing, they're going to be paddling in a kayak or paddling their bodies. One of our athletes has chosen to swim across. They're going to make one complete lap around the lake, which is roughly 5 miles. And then once they finish that, they're going to transition across the lake here. And then from that location, they are going to run, or one of our athletes has chosen to push in a wheelchair rugby chair. One of our rugby players is here and is going to do that with him. So we're looking for them to be able to adapt and move efficiently through the water, on the land, in whatever their event is that they're competing in.
Today I will be on my stand-up paddleboard to assist Jonathan Lopez. He opted to do the swim portion as he's training for an open water swim. So I'll be paddleboarding next to him just to supervise and make sure he's feeling okay throughout the whole course, as well as making sure that the kayakers are safe out there. Some of the athletes that will get on a weekly basis may or may not do physical activities like this on a daily or weekly basis. So it's kind of testing that out, seeing their capabilities, and kind of challenging them to see how far they can go.
Come on. Almost home. Let's go. Good. Let's go. Good. I got you. Woo!
The other day I was driving home from work, and it was it was a busy morning. I went to the hospital, I stopped by and saw you guys at the clinic, I went to work, I stayed at work late, and I started, when on my drive home I was by myself and I got some windshield time, and I was like, I just started like smiling, even though I was really stressed out at the time. And I realized why I was so happy is because I was on my way here. And I wasn't going home, I was coming here. And I knew who was here. And the thought of that was so cool to me. And the entire time from when I started Oscar Mike, I always felt guilty when people would ask me about the start of it. And they were asking it like, oh, you started this, you know, they were interviewing me as like a founder. I'm like, well, wait a second. Before I go taking all the credit, this was an idea at the National Veteran Wheelchair Games. You know, this was something that spawned out of the necessity for this, you know, to keep guys on the move, to keep them Oscar Mike. It means the world to me. I love every single one of you, and I'm extremely grateful for all of you.
Thanks, Noah! Oscar Mike! Continue it! Woo!
You know, like when we started this thing in a garage with, you know, $100, I really never thought guys would end up getting tattoos that say Oscar Mike on them or our logo on their bodies. We had to have our stuff out there. We had to have people believing in it. But I think people use Oscar Mike as like an alarm clock almost. When you don't want to get out of bed in the morning, you think about it. And you think that if you use the term Oscar Mike, or you think about, heck, if you're an able-bodied person, let's say, if you've never been injured, you know, you're having a rough day, your alarm clock's going off, you're like, I'd rather sleep in. Maybe I was out drinking last night. Who knows what your excuse is? Everybody has excuses when their alarm goes off. But you start thinking about us and all the injured veterans that you see through all of our stuff. You think about how hard of a time they have. And I think people recognize that. You know, people aren't dumb. They know that we're struggling through a lot of things, and we're doing it without complaining. That's why I say it's like an alarm clock to people. When they can use us as inspiration and motivation, you know, it makes it a little bit easier to get out of bed when that thing starts ringing. When you're out running, you know, even if it's a mile, you're not thinking about anything else. You're thinking about finishing that mile. You're thinking about finishing it faster than you did the last time. You're breathing in this fresh air in an intense way. The endorphins are going up. It is like meditating in a way, working out, being physically active. And then you start beating goals. And goals are so important for every human being. You know, it leads to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. Oscar Mike is like, it's encouragement for people to just keep crushing their goals.